Nation. I am here with my No Cap Fund crew, Walter Clapp and Roger Scott. Walter, Roger, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Jeff. It's 2026, and
Your sound went out, Walter.
Halfway through.
Roger, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, but I'm in a hotel. I have bandwidth issues, so I'm turning off the camera, and that's why everyone will know that this is the last time you'll see my attractive face this evening.
It actually looks very clear right now, so I don't know.
Oh, it
you
does?
might want to. Yeah, you look
Okay,
good.
I'll
You're
leave
looking
it for
good.
now and send up a signal if it starts geeking out, and then I'll close it.
All right, Walter, is your sound back on now?
it is. Can
All
you
right.
hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
So
Technological issues abound. What I said was, I'm so excited for 2026. It is already on fire. It is just, I mean, off to a very, very, exciting start.
Absolutely, and part of that exciting start, we have a very special guest today, Josh Lewis from Saving Elephants podcast newsletter is joining us today. He's right there. You can see him if you're watching. And we also have some other exciting news. We have two other pieces of very exciting news. One I'll share with you right now. I am now the president of No Cap Fund, and Walter is going to be moved to vice president. We made this change as we're kind of expanding and growing. Walter's going to be heading up the Representation Foundation as that gets off the ground. This will give him more time for that, and I'll take over for president for No Cap Fund. We also have another very important announcement, but we're going to get to that in our third segment. So if you're watching, you're just going to have to stick around, listen to us yammer on about our topics today, which are we're going to, in segment number one, we're going to cover conservatism. Josh had a great podcast episode recently with Jonah Goldberg that I want to touch on. And I just recently read Ben Shapiro's new book, Lions and Scavengers. I thought it was worth the talk. In segment number two, we're going to talk about Venezuela. Apparently, something's going on down there. I don't know. I haven't heard about it yet. I'm hoping these guys can fill me in. And then in the last segment of the show, we are going to be looking ahead to 2026. But before we get into the nitty gritty, how was everyone's break? We haven't been on for about a month. Christmas, the holidays. How was everybody's break? You have a good time?
I got
Don't-
coal in my stocking, so
Oh.
it's okay. but I deserved it, so there's that.
I traveled across to two different states over 2 weeks, and I didn't get sick, and I had a great time with my family, and I'm traveling again. I'm up in Red Lodge, and I'm here for the week. I've had a hearing. I just filed a lawsuit to sue a conservation district who's gone rogue, and I'm about to sue the Department of Labor here in the state of Montana as well. So again, very exciting start for me. Very exciting start, I think, for the Representation Foundation, the No Cap Fund. I'll just give another little sneak peek. We have new board members. That's who we're going to be announcing at the end of the show. So do stick around. And I'm excited.
Yeah, I just been recovering from my hip surgery, so I haven't really done much. I was able to get up and walk on Christmas, so that was nice. I hosted. I had my whole family over here. We had illness going around our family too. My mom was sick; she wasn't able to make it down for Christmas because she had pneumonia. My uncle was sick, so he wasn't able to make it up. But we still had a good time with everybody else that was not contagious. Josh, how was your Christmas?
It was appropriately eventful, I suppose. It wasn't terribly exciting, but that was actually good. It was pretty peaceful, so I can't complain.
That's awesome. All right, so let's get into the first topic. Josh, you had an awesome conversation with Jonah Goldberg recently on your podcast, and as I was listening to it, I just, I was looking ahead to, asking you some questions on it, and I figured, I might as well grill you on it. So Jonah, and while he was talking to you, number one, he revealed, I don't know, was this new information or not? He's writing a new book on conservatism, or he's actually not writing it yet, but he's going to write a new book on conservatism. So that's
He's
pretty
been
exciting.
hinting this for almost a year, and every once in a while he'll mention it. But it'll happen at some point, I suppose.
Yeah, so that's some very interesting information that I think his fans would be excited about. But he believes that after Trump, there's kind of going to be this power vacuum in the Republican Party, and the gloves will be off. He also believes that the Reaganite faction of the Republicans, the ones that have kind of been put in the corner to for lack of a better term, will have a larger role after Trump. And I was listening to this, and as he's saying this, and I'm on my exercise bike, trying to get my hip back, and while I'm listening to this, by the way, and I just agree. I'm like, this is right. And then I was talking with a friend of mine. We caught a beer, and he disagrees. He won, and I was surprised because we're all in our bubbles. He doesn't really think that Jonah Goldberg is all that influential anymore, which I was surprised about because to me he's very influential. I follow him on Twitter. I listen to him. He's in my sphere, and he doesn't really believe that the Reaganite faction is going to have a comeback. So I was just curious, from your perspective, where do you see conservatism going? And do you believe, are you with Jonah on the fact that, the Reaganite faction is going to come back? And is Jonah still an influential figure? Because, I thought he was. I was surprised at this information. Is that guy crazy, or are we crazy?
Well, it's or both, right?
Or both, yeah.
and
Yeah,
I'm kind of leaning towards both because I think the one thing that is indisputably true, or that I would have the most confidence in of what you just introduced there, is that Jonah Goldberg is right. There's going to be a really big fight post-Trump. And part of that is just because, and this is by design, not necessarily a criticism of Trump, although I'm very critical of him. He very deliberately is not all that ideological. He's not all that programmatic. He's not all that consistent, if you will, about policies. Consistent in rhetoric with, say, immigration or trade, but even there, the policies are so wildly out of kilter that you can believe almost anything on the right and claim some degree of Trumpism, if you will. And as such, he has coalesced this, or he has this broad coalition that itself is probably, fair to say, not Reaganite in the sense that you were bringing it up, but is itself not in agreement. I don't know to what degree the Reagan coalition, let's say, will have its day in court after Trump is gone. I think it's fair to say, and I'll put myself in that group, it's not monolithic, the Reagan coalition. There are a lot of disagreements within it, and neither is MAGAism monolithic. Neither is, honestly, Trumpism, MAGAism are not the same thing. And I think part of the problem here is this is, I'm sure, something you guys talk about all the time. There's are we up to 340 million Americans now? I lose track sometimes. It's been, okay, 340. It is inconceivably possible we could have a reawakening of the Reagan coalition or a continuation of some form of MAGAism, or it can go in a completely different direction nobody's really anticipating. I don't know. I think the thing that the Reagan coalition has going for it is sort of a tried and true historical roots. We've done a lot of the intellectual heavy lifting, if you will, over a half century of kind of putting a movement together, and feathering our caps for, I wasn't the one doing this, obviously, but ending the Cold War, bringing down inflation, restoring some sense of trust or hope in the United States. And those are things that you could draw from a historical perspective, but that does not mean it's guaranteed it's going to make a comeback. I think that the future is very much unwritten and that we have a responsibility, therefore, to be doing our best to understand the truth and try to advance that argument. I hope Reagan makes a comeback in 2028, I suppose. But I don't know. My concern is it's going to be a sort of Nikki Haley type Hail Mary, where like, here's the candidate that's supposed to be kind of this old school Republican that ultimately ends up fizzling in the face of a more populist moment. But that doesn't necessarily mean Trumpism is going to continue. It could go a completely different direction there as well.
And I know Walter has something he wants to get in here about conservatism, but just off of what you just said there, could the reverse of how Trump rose to power happen? Meaning that now the populists are in charge. They could eat each other up. There's 16 nominees. They all are fighting for the same piece of the pie. Meanwhile, there's one Reaganite faction. And they have a loyal faction of people that show up to the polls, vote for like 33% of them, which is essentially what Trump won in the first, primaries that got him over the hump. And, once you knock out, Iowa, New Hampshire, North Carolina, like you kind of like the ball gets rolling. Could
Yeah.
that happen in reverse, going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I think the history of the last, say, 40 years of politics in this country is that every time one air quote side wins, they overinterpret those results, overplay their hand, and then they end up in the outs. Now, we do seem to be living in a populist moment, but I dare say that most Americans probably identify as the exhausted majority. Wouldn't necessarily say I'm strongly conservative or progressive. It's just, where are the adults, right? We're embarrassed by the antics of the Biden administration, by the antics of the Trump administration, and would probably be longing for that candidate. Now, that does not mean if you got every single one of us into a room, we would all agree on who that candidate is. And there's the rub, right? There's where things get a little tricky. But yes, you could easily have a populist wave overread the degree to which the United States has become populist. And this is something that Yuval Levin talks about very often. We have not yet had for many, many years someone run for president, or let's just say not even president, someone for the party that's in power, in Congress, in the White House, to say, okay, that was actually the easy part. The hard part is governing. The hard part is now growing the very coalition that got us here to power. The hard part is now convincing the American people we were, in fact, the right choice, and here's why. It seems like it's more a game of, now that we have won, let's just shoot for the fences. And I'm not saying that means everybody needs to be moderate, or that we can't be, say, bold or adventurous maybe in our policy pursuits. But it does mean that there's a sort of short-sightedness to, let's just win this election. Somehow that's going to solve things. And I do think we have kind of lost the muscle memory for what it looks like to actually have a party make a concerted effort to make us want to vote for them, not just to be afraid of the other side.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
argue that has everything to do with a capped house. But I'm going to kick it over to Walter, and we'll get to that a little bit later. Go ahead, Walter.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think it's kind of this. It's like this dichotomy of this cult of personality is going to be the solution, right? Like, let's find the perfect candidate, is what you said, right? And it's like it's this focus on on the executive, right? On having a Trump card, right? Because of the capped house, which we'll get to. But going back to the book, to Jonah's book, it seems like his project is to kind of define terms. I mean, he said that several times in the podcast. It seems like he wants to define terms. Would you agree with Jonah that kind of the project of conservatism in this moment is to define terms, and terms that are important to us, the movement, if we want to be unified?
I mean, it's certainly an aspect in this moment. I think I celebrated in Trump's first administration when he made one offhand comment that he was a nationalist. Maybe he wasn't a conservative, he was a nationalist. Like, that's probably fair. Now, there's various definitions of nationalism, but I long for the day when people don't assume Tucker Carlson is a conservative, because he's not a conservative by almost any working definition. I don't necessarily mean just to label you not a conservative means you're the bad person or I'm against you. It's just words mean things, and we have to have some integrity around the language to make any sense of arguments we're having. Now, that being said, I think there's a legitimate way to broaden the definition of conservative, so a lot of people I may personally strongly disagree with might fit that broader definition. But I think there is a, and you may be alluding in that conversation, remember Jonah Goldberg, I think he was quoting Confucius, who said if he had the power to do one thing, it would be the, what did he call it, the rectification of the terms, or the, I forget what the terminology was, but essentially, like, could we set the clock back on language so we can at least all agree what these words mean? I do think, however, the way language works, even if we could do that, I think just right out of the gate, it's going to get messy in a hurry. And so there is almost always a necessity of not only defining your terms, but having kind of a more broad-minded approach to recognizing that even the terms we have, even if we could perfectly define them, our human capacity is so limited that a word could never encompass a worldview, a movement. Maybe we could get it down to, say, the level of policy prescriptions, but even then, situations in history changes such that terms are not fixed or concrete, even though they do have some, some benefits. So, and we do this all the time in life, right? We have to oscillate between the general and the specific, right? Generalizing things and then realizing that doesn't encompass everything. Our brains cannot contain the whole of reality. We have to rely on worldviews to filter things through. And that's okay. It just means we have to be cautious to consistently update and check and kind of look under the hood, make sure things are working.
Well, and this is, Jonah talks about kind of falling back to the strongman theory, right? That this is just like a feature of humanity. And, it's like this cult of personality, because we get so tired of defining things and, the hard work that kind of classical liberalism demands, right? That good old work ethic. And so we just are like, well, let's just pick the guy who's defining, things different ways every day. But at least he's, being honest, right? Which makes no sense. But what I'm getting at here is, it seems like the project to me is like, if there's going to be a concerted effort to, in this power struggle, claim territory for the conservative movement as opposed to the communist movement, which I agree we are against. The conservative movement is against that. But I think it's important for us to define, what are we for, right? Not just what we're against, but what are we for? And so definitions, I think, are helpful because they're positive, right? We're saying, here's what this is, right? And so I wonder, Josh Lewis, as you sit here today, Mr. Elephant Saver, can you define conservatism for us, for the listeners here?
Simply no. I have been trying for 7 years to come up with a working definition. Now, I can give some thoughts in that direction. So I'm going to talk, and you shut me up if I'm going too far, because I could be here all night. But my betters have defined it in ways that are very helpful. Abraham Lincoln called it, the devil we know we trust the devil we know to the devil we don't. Sort of this innate sense that the known is not, and by calling it a devil, it doesn't mean it's good. It just means it may be preferable to some unknown. Sir Roger Scruton talks about it beginning with the sentiment we all agree with, which is, we look around us, we've got good things in this life. They're easily destroyed and taken from us. They're not necessarily easily built. So the proper orientation to reality, therefore, is conservation, one to conserve. Russell Kirk talks about it begins with a sentiment, kind of echoing, or not echoing because it came before him, but similar to Scruton there. It has to move on from that, but that it's not programmatic, it's not ideological. It doesn't start with everything can be boiled down to policies. Rather, it starts with sort of notions of prudence, of limitations, of humility, of recognition that we have good things, of recognition that there are permanent truths, as Kirk called it, things that are out there in the ether that don't change. In fact, a recent guest I had on, I was going to say Stephen Miller, but I did not have Stephen Miller on. A name will come to me in a second. He had, I thought, a very helpful working definition. It's the ever-searching, the conservative is ever searching for the unchangeable in an ever-changing universe. What are those things that actually stay with us? And from an American perspective, I would argue that is the Constitution, the Declaration, the Bill of Rights. Those things our founders bequeathed us. And we can go on from that and add to it the Emancipation Proclamation, maybe the Civil Rights era. There are things that, can be not improved upon, or well, maybe improved upon, but that same basis structure is still there. So there is a sense in which, as an American conservative, I'm saying, okay, well, I'm trying to conserve the founding order. Things change and they evolve, but how do we maintain the founders' vision?
I love this. I think it's perfect. It was good. That was a good ensemble of words. So I want to push one level further now. I think that the definition of conservatism rests principally on representation. The concept of representation that baked in there is representation as we see it fixed in the Constitution, in what was meant to be in our the First Amendment and our Bill of Rights. Would you agree with me there that representation is I think the blend between true conservatism is just like a pure calcification. So it's conservatism trends towards calcification, but we also accept some oil, right? Some lubrication, some progressivism or some tiny amount of change. And the way in which things can change in a conservative way, right, is through our representatives. That in some measure, representation is the only way through which a conservative can conserve, right? Representation is the direction that we ask our representatives to trend. And so if our representation has failed us, if our representation is not representing our interests to conserve, our desire to conserve, but instead somebody else's, that true the true conservative movement is impossible, right, on a individual basis. And so you obviously see where I'm going, but I wonder if you can, if you'd agree with me that the definition of conservative has to include representation.
That's a. I hesitate to say yes, and I don't know exactly. Well, let me put it this way. I would agree with you that representation, at least in an American conservative sense, is a vital, essential, absolutely necessary component of conservatism. And I think it's fair to say that in absence of a, let's say, government that is in any form representative, you can't actually exercise a conservative politics. I think that I would look to other words such as the precarious balance between order and liberty is maybe the essential kernel of what we're talking about, but that representation is the, let's call it the lubrication whereby order and liberty gets transmuted to, to society at large. And I don't know necessarily where you're going with this. The only qualm I would have with the notion that without representation you can't entertain the conservative project is that's true to an extent, but I don't think these things are ever either have a 100% representative or 100% non-representative situation.
Oh yeah.
I think we're somewhat in flux. And you very rightly put, conservatism is not, this is a misconception, it's just not true. It's not about calcification. It's not about trying to turn the clocks back. It's not about trying to just stop, although sometimes it can be. It's a philosophy of change, and it has to be rooted oftentimes in higher principles of order. Usually, but not always, a sense of the creator, a sense of providence, a sense of God's got this in control. Therefore, our duty is to try to mitigate the harmful effects of change and channel it in a direction that's creative and helpful and life affirming, not just one that is, there is a conservative sentiment that's just, get off my lawn and we just want to set the clocks back. But that's not the kind of conservatism that's animating and virtuous and I think exciting that we really could tap into. I may have strayed from answering your question. I hope I didn't there.
So let me jump in just as a point of reference. Like Edmund Burke is kind of like he's one of the conservative leaders, right? Like that's like the root. He advocated for American representation when it came to the in Parliament, right? Like he understood that was kind of the crux of the problem, and you mentioned is like we have to have agency, we have to have some way to make change, we have to have like a little bit of power or agency over our lives, and we get that through representation. We can't have full democracy, right?
Right.
Like and there is this balance between order and liberty, and that balance is found in representative government. It's small groups representing a larger group. So I don't know if I kind of lean towards Walter. Obviously, we're president, vice president of No Cap Fund. Of course, we're going to say like representation, whether it's no matter what party you're a part of, you should have representation as the core principle of your of your group. But I do want to,
and I don't want to leave with the misconception. I think representation is unimportant in any way. I think maybe part of what my qualm would be is that when I say conservative, I'm talking about a broader worldview that encompasses more than just politics or political structures. If we're talking about the politics of America as far as the just the mechanisms of government, I think it's entirely fair to say representation is that kernel that everything else sort of springs from.
So
yeah, okay.
Hold on.
So I think
I get Roger in
the definition of conservative government,
Mm-hmm.
I think, can only exist if it takes representation seriously, right? I think classical liberalism is about the division of power, the police powers and the capitalist commercial powers, horizontally and vertically, including, I would say, an originalist interpretation of the Constitution, by our Supreme Court. But it happens through a representative government, right? Like the structure, right, versus a cult of personality, right?
Right.
Like for me, conservatism is about the structure that allows us to distribute and wield power as between, the powerful, our representatives, or the capital, and the average person, right? The average worker, right? As opposed to communism, right? This is what we offer, right? This is the system in which capitalism can thrive, that preserves and protects our Americanism, our ability to be who our founders set us out to be, which is I think religiously preserved and free, free to speak, free to engage in commerce, and that there is no conservative movement, and I think it is representative that the Republican Party, the first three letters are REP, right? It is all about, I think, fundamentally representation, or it should be. That for me, I guess, is my pitch to you, that if you want to save the elephants, it fundamentally has to be about this, like about the word representation. That if we're not talking about representation as kind of the vehicle through which the Republican Party could really dominate the next 100 years in a true conservative structural movement, we're just going to wind up with another cult of personality. That's my concern. And so, Jeff, I'm sorry, you want to get Roger in? Go ahead.
Yeah. So go ahead, Roger.
Well, you guys are having all these detailed discussions of conservatism, and I got nothing to offer. I'm learning what you're saying because I'm not one of you. I don't listen to Jonah Goldberg. I was struggling to read the review of Ben Shapiro's book before this thing started. And you're bringing monotheistic religion, the creator, God, into it. Well, don't even get me started on that because I guarantee I'll offend you. I'm learning more about what it is you guys believe is so great about conservatism. And I'll grant you, not everything about conservatism is horrible. But my view is we've got a 3,000 century long progress machine going on here, because that's the default switch in the human operating system. We make progress. That's what we do. We may progress ourselves straight into extinction. But if that is our fate, then damn it, that is what we will do, because that is what we do, right? And every step of that progress over 3,000 centuries has had to overcome some conservative voice, objection, of whatever, right? So as far as I'm concerned, progress is stilted, not halted. It can never be halted. It can be obstructed for a period of time in a geography. For example, what we call the Dark Ages, right? When the Catholic Church they were suppressing Western Europe, but that didn't stop progress. The Middle Eastern cultures were flourishing, and India, art, mathematics, medicine, science, all of that. North Korea today, I would argue, the suppression of knowledge in the USA today. You may succeed for a while in a particular period, but if we don't make progress in the US, the Chinese are going to still be making progress, right? So my idea is that you've asked before about conservative, and my response is, I don't think of myself as a liberal, but I have certain knowledge that I'm not a conservative, because I'm not interested in obstructing progress. And not every conservative wants to stop all the progress. I get it. There's nuance here. But as if I had to throw a switch one way or the other in the voting booth, I'm not going to vote for the party that stands in the way of progress.
So I don't necessarily think that conservatives want to stand in the way of progress. I think, and I've said this before, I want to conserve the things that work, and I want to build on them.
But
right?
you're
And
not all conservatives. You're a conservative. Other conservatives have different views on that.
Right. But I want to get into something Walter mentioned real quick. The first three letters of the Republican Party is REP, right? And I think this is important when you're talking about Republican and representative government, because what did Madison defined republic as the system of government in which the mode of representation takes place. I'm bungling, it's not a direct quote, but it's something to that effect. And if we look at what happened after the American Revolution, the French Revolution was a fight for representation. It didn't work, right? Ultimately, it didn't work, but it was a fight for representation. You fast forward to the revolutions of 1848, okay, in Germany, in Spain, and all of these different places. These groups of people that were fighting for a revolution, they called themselves Republicans. And the thing that they wanted was a representative government, right? Because they understood, they looked at America and they say, this thing's kind of working out over here. And it kind of makes sense, right? Because it's like, the British government was representative in a way, right? It had a parliament, but over time, the British government got more and more representative. And it continued so even after the American Revolution. And, I think at the core, like if you're going to call yourself a Republican, you have to believe in representative government. Can we agree on that? Come on.
It may depend on. There are a lot of Republicans who do call themselves Republicans, and I don't know that they would, whether they recognize it or not, I think are far more likely to play a kind of cult of personality game, at least under the current system.
Agreed.
I do think that the roots of the Republican Party, properly understood, would beckon back, and to a certain degree, I even say the roots of the Democratic Party would have a similar kind of, there's a left and right version of representation imprinted upon the heart of every American, from our founding. I'm not of the left, but I do want to acknowledge that, let me put it this way, there are illiberals on the left and illiberals on the right, just as there are lowercase liberals on the left and lowercase liberals on the right. And there are times when I find myself with far more common ground with my friends on the left who at least can agree on the structures and strictures of our government and the representative nature and the rule of law and the importance of respecting elections. So I don't, and maybe Jeff, I don't know that I know the heart of your question there. I agree it is needful that representation be understood if you're going to call yourself a Republican. I just don't know that that's a universally shared idea among the Republican Party.
Well, I don't think it's an idea shared among the Republican Party right now. I'm saying it should be. Like if you're going to, because that term rhino has been passed around a lot, right? And that has been labeled onto the Reaganite faction. Basically everybody that has been a Republican for the last 30 years is now a rhino. And all these new people that kind of just showed up, or, somebody like Donald Trump, who was a Democrat for a really long period of time, now is like the Republican. And I just, if we're talking about definitions and we're talking about like defining things and words mean things, I think Republican means a thing, and it means to support a representative government. And I think that if you're going to be part of the Republican Party, you should support representation. It is how the system works.
It's a litmus test, right? It should be a litmus test for members of the Republican Party who are running for Congress or the president. I mean, should be a question about, how they view representation, I think, especially vis-a-vis, the House, obviously. Because there is, I think, it would be popular, I think, in my polling with all of the average people that I have talked to over the past 3 years. And two is it's consistent, again, with, I think, what we've done, say, in Japan or in South Korea, what we're trying to do in Venezuela, which we're going to get to next, right? But if we're going to lead on the world stage, we have to show that our government works, and right now it doesn't, right? I mean, fundamentally something is, I think, broken about the way that we're choosing our representatives. But my point is, it is a result of a structural flaw, right? So, although it's somewhat nerdy, I think it's very important they can call themselves the Reagan Caucus, or whatever it is, the old guard, people who care about the institutions that have built this nation. It is important for them to relieve a little bit of pressure and give all of the people, Democrats and Republicans alike, and libertarians, and the whole gamut, a little bit more of a voice, so that we are less reliant on the cult of personality to direct us, willy-nilly, into another regime change op that they, wake up and decide is a great idea. So I'll shut up.
All right. Well, let's transition into that next. We'll skip over Shapiro's book for tonight, because that ran a little bit longer than I played.
After I spent all that time reading that review, you're killing me.
Oh man.
It's great. Everyone should go read it. It doesn't seem positive enough to me. I wish it was positive. I wish he had talked about uncapping the House. That would have made it great.
Well, yeah. I actually read the book, and I thought that there was some positivity there. But maybe we'll circle back to it. I do want to make sure that we get into this Venezuela thing, because it's very important news. So you guys hear that like something happened down there? So apparently the United States government sent in a very elite team and captured Maduro. They brought him back to the United States. And his wife, yes. And
also under indictment.
Brought us back to the United States, and they are, as Roger mentioned, under indictment. So this is causing quite a stir. Now, there's lots of different angles that we can talk about this. One of them is, does the president or the executive branch have the authority to do this? Now, Marco Rubio was on pretty much everything this weekend, and he says yes, they do. He says they have the authority to do this because this was a limited operation. This was not war. There are not standing ground troops. It was over, it's done with, and they've moved on. Jason Crow was on Fox today. He's a Democratic representative, and he was pressed over and over again by the Fox representative or anchor about, was this a good thing or was this a bad thing? He supports the fact that Maduro was a bad guy. He shouldn't be in there, but he says this is not in the American people's interest. He didn't go as far to say that the president or the administration committed any type of crimes, but he says that they should be focused on something else. So I'm going to lead with Roger, since Roger was kind of left out of our conservatism group. Roger, do you believe that the Trump administration has the authority to do this? And do you also agree or disagree with Representative Crow that this is not in the American people's interest?
Well, it's really messy. Is it in the American people's interest to get Maduro out of the seat, out of the office? Absolutely. But is the medicine worse? Is the cure worse than the illness, right? Or is this going to lead to all kinds of bad outcomes because of the perceived misbehavior of America in this regard? Is this going to lead us back to the whole spheres of influence kind of world, the brutal world of the past? There's a risk. There's a danger. And it would not surprise me. You saw me texted this weekend about this. He will go after Greenland. He may go after Canada. He may go after all these other places. The fact that he got away with it this time, apparently, isn't going to satisfy his appetite. His appetite will grow. He will move on Greenland one way or another. And that is going to be a disaster. Going after the territory of an ally, that's just ridiculous. So does he have the authority to do this? My response is no. We've got a substantial portion of our military parked off the coast of this country. We used military assets to bomb inside the country. All right. Yeah, we sent in a SEAL Team 6 or a Delta Force or whatever the special ops guys went in and did this. Yeah, we did that in Pakistan to get Osama bin Laden years ago too, right? We didn't have to put the whole military in the game. If you're going to use military assets, you're obligated to go to Congress and get their at least approval, if not declaration of war. If you're going to do, some other sort of limited strike with military personnel, yes, there's some military assets, but it's the small thing. If you're putting a huge military presence in play, now we're talking about the arena of war, and you need Congress's approval to move.
Josh, what do you think about that? Did he need Congress's approval, or is this more like he mentioned, like a Bin Laden situation or like a Noriega situation, or like
and by the way, Congress did give approval for both of those,
and a Gaddafi situation in Libya. What do you think?
I think this. Well, first of all, I am not an expert on this matter, so I don't want to try to weigh in as if I have the answer. Is it or is it not? Allowable, legal, constitutional. The first place my mind goes is one of my favorite Despair.com posters showing a flood and with the caption, "No single raindrop believes it was responsible for the flood." Because I think it's necessary to even have a conversation like this to acknowledge we've gone through 80 years now of not really seeking congressional approval in the way that it's sort of black and white understood. Now, in all fairness, I don't know that the founding fathers ever envisioned a post-World War II United States where one of the lone superpower at one time, one of the other superpowers. I don't have the all-time. I'm not a purist libertarian that every time somebody sneezes in the Middle East, we have to get Congress's approval, or the president would have to get Congress's approval to deal with that. But this is certainly, if it is okay, it's pretty dang close to the line of not okay in terms of could the Trump administration have done this or could they have not done it? And even had this not happened, we would have been talking about him blowing boats out of the Caribbean. That wasn't cool. He didn't have the congressional approval for that. He had a very loose theory about how this was in the national interest. I will say, echoing, I like what you said, Roger. I should probably say up front that I think we ought to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. This could have been a terrible decision, completely illegal. But thank God Maduro was taken out of Venezuela. I have no love lost for that guy, and most Venezuelans are dancing in the streets, so far as I could tell. I am a little concerned what comes next, but this is. I think we can say with equal breath, he was a bad dude. It's in our national interest that he's not in charge of Venezuela, but that doesn't necessarily mean we need to take our eye off the ball of what is the most appropriate way to deal with these sort of national security issues.
Walter?
Yeah, I think arguably legal. It also seems now that the Trump team had already kind of handpicked and had a bunch of backroom discussions with the vice president. The vice president, has agreed kind of to a takeover. She's basically being our puppet, but she's also, her father was a communist revolutionary. She saw him murdered or, was there. She's clearly also very ideologically committed to communism, but she also wants the oil. She wants the money. And, if you were going to stop this, the only real way to stop this is for Congress to say, if you do shit like this, we are going to remove your funding for your ballroom and for whatever other trinkets you might like, right? That is the answer to this situation, because the courts just can't act quickly enough, and they just don't act in areas like this where it's an executive function, clearly, right? Like whether or not it was or was not, preventing, an imminent threat, right? It's just not something that the judiciary ever is really going to get involved with. But Congress can and should, and they can say, look, you need to come to the Super 8 or the clandestine 5 or the whatever committee in the House and the Senate, and needs to be talking to them. And what I would also say is, you also, if you had an unkept House, maybe Americans would agree, hey, we need something like the Monroe Doctrine, here in the Western Hemisphere, and so there is an authorized use of military force to prevent China and Russia, spies, in this whole hemisphere, right? If they're going to kick us out of Taiwan, then by God, we're going to kick them out of everywhere over here. But none of that happens without a real clear-headed Congress, which we just currently don't have. Right now we have a puppet Congress. I call it the cyborg Congress, or the spineless cyborg Congress, because they're just doing whatever basically Trump wants, but Trump doesn't know what he wants, right? He's not a policy expert, right? You need a true deliberative body to come to these long-term decision points, and you also need buy-in of the American people, and not just the Republican Party. You need bipartisan support for issues of national defense, and so I always just come back to uncapping the House, but really I think this situation in Venezuela, it's just more of our failings in South America and Mexico, over the last 80 years, right? Just time and again, we've removed a person, and then we prop up some other, cult of personality dictator, and lo and behold, the people suffer, the drugs keep going, it's horrible, living conditions, and then maybe it's okay for a little while, and it's like a little bit less corrupt, but it hasn't worked very well, I would say. In my estimation, our adventures in the Western Hemisphere to the south have largely failed. And I would also look to internally, right? So if you look at the native tribes in America, you will also see that our ability to establish a genuine good relationship with people that we conquer, essentially, we haven't figured that out. We haven't figured out how to give them a real voice. Instead, we've been very paternalistic, while not really, making clear boundaries, giving clear definitions, and it's just it's a travesty. So we need to get our stuff in order. I'll try to stop cursing. I'm sorry, Jeff and Josh and Roger and all the fair listeners.
Oh, Roger,
but I get excited.
You want to get in there?
Yeah, so the ballroom is a really poor choice. Congress can't pull funding for that because he's building with bribes that he collected from a bunch of business people and his donors. So Congress can't stop the funding of his ridiculous, profane ballroom. So use another example. And the other thing is we haven't figured out how to deal with Native Americans. I seem to recall something called the Treaty of Echota or Echota from the 1800s, whereby the Cherokee Nation, I think it was the 1820s when Andrew Jackson, the Trail of Tears and all that, they were to have a seat in Congress. Now, it was not a voting seat, it was just a delegate like we have from the Virgin Islands and Guam and all the other territories. A person has never been seated in our Congress under that treaty for more than 100 years. And it was given to the Cherokee, but the idea here in the modern day is this would be the voice of all Native Americans. This would be their opportunity to have a seat at the table of power. It's been over 100 years. We figured out how to include the Native Americans. We just choose not to do it. We refuse to do it.
Like we refuse to expand the House. It's like this
Yep.
thing that like
Like we
representation
refuse
is
to-
representation
we
is
refuse to
important.
upgrade our infrastructure for
And the
50
British
years,
didn't
then
want
we
to
have
give
to
it
do-
to us. We fought a war over it, and here we are, 250 years later, and we're still arguing about it.
It's the same with infrastructure. We refused that for so long, then we end up spending $2 billion to have our infrastructure bill, and even that's getting whittled away and misappropriated.
So I'll come back to Venezuela real quick. So I think this is a difficult situation. Ultimately, I think that you need to go to Congress for this type of stuff. I agree with Walter. It would be difficult to get any type of congressional approval because Congress is broken. Okay? So like if you're like, all right, well Congress is broken, they're not going to approve this, but we still have this really big problem in Venezuela. And it's not just Venezuela, it's the entire Western Hemisphere, right? Ultimately for the last 15, 20 years, we have been asleep. I wrote about this a little bit in Real Clear Defense, basically tying on to JFK's dissertation that he wrote in Congress is America sleeping? Or while Britain slept, leading up to the World War II. And, we're kind of been asleep at the wheel for the last 20 years while China has leveraged serious influence in our hemisphere. Their Belt and Road initiative has, created the infrastructure that we need in America. They are building in South America, and they're making friends and allies, and they're leveraging those friends and allies to benefit them. And
they're getting collateral signed on the line too, which is important.
Right.
They can squeeze the asset.
Right. And we have to pay attention to that as our leaders need to pay attention to that. They need to talk about it with us as people through the representative body. And I think that, if you just sit on the sidelines, you keep ignoring the problem over and over again, the problem's just going to get worse. I think this was an opportunity to remove a bad guy with limited, at least so far, limited military power. I think this is kind of something new. Most of the time we go for full regime change. Troops on the ground, let's take everybody out. This is what they were talking about. Crow was talking about on Fox is like, well, they didn't even remove the regime. They left the regime in power. They just removed Maduro. So how is anything going to change?
Yep.
And the Fox anchor was like, well, they cut the head off the snake. The snake's there, but it's got no head. Isn't that better? Right? And I think that the answer is we don't know yet. This is a little bit different. We cut the head off the snake, and maybe the people that fill the vacuum of power choose to do so in a different way. You mentioned that Trump said this on the plane. He says America's in charge right now, and you said that we had a backdoor deal with the vice president. We're going to get the oil companies in there. We're going to get influence again. I think an American influence is overall a positive good in the world if done correctly. I don't know if we've been doing it correctly for a little bit of time now, but I think it's better than sending in a full-scale invasion. And if you allow the country to repair, fill the vacuum on their own, fill that power, let's see where they go. The people are celebrating. The new leader doesn't want to get taken out either. So maybe they change the way. Maybe the regime wasn't on board with everything that Maduro wanted to do, right? And you get a little bit of stability there because when you break down stability, then anything could happen. What do you guys think about that?
I think that Trump has demonstrated in a multiple ways with certain that he has or I shouldn't say Trump, the Trump administration has demonstrated an extraordinary skill set for short-term limited military exercises. This, of course, being the latest one. There was also the killing of Soleimani. I can't ever remember how to pronounce the Soleimani. Thank you. The Iranian Guard guy, a limited strike there. There was the bombing, of course, of Iranian nuclear facilities. And in each of those cases, I think I agree with the phrase that Jeff used. Is this a good thing? We kind of have to wait and see. It did do things. It did disrupt things. You know, Trump now says we're in charge of Venezuela, but I'm old enough to remember when he claimed we were in charge of the Gaza Strip. You know, and where did that go? I think that's kind of the problem, what may be lacking here. And I'm not trying to imply all short-term decisions the Trump administration makes are good ones. I'm just saying he's shown a level of competence that his predecessors had, both of them had not, with some of these short-term gains, with the one major exception of getting Osama bin Laden under the Obama administration. I'll definitely give him that. I think my concern, though, is the more long-term strategy. Is this well thought through? And that necessitates, obviously, representation, but it also necessitates, I think, just adults at the table within a presidential administration trying to think, well, what are we trying to do? What are our long-term aims? What are our long-term goals? I'm struck by almost everything the Trump administration does is very much phone and pen. It's very much executive order. It's very much what he can get through a majority Republican Congress. Almost nothing is, and granted, past administrations have been this way too, but he's doubled down on it. Very little is ever a concerted bipartisan effort for any lasting change. You know, if we really wanted to solve the immigration issue, healthcare policy, a lot of our international funding issues, infrastructure, as Roger mentioned, that necessitates some sort of a bipartisan effort, because you really need a situation in which when the next guy gets in power, he doesn't have every reason and every tool to just tear it all down. You know, if they were part of that discussion. Again, I'm not suggesting everything needs to be a mealy-mouthed moderation. I'm just saying that that sort of durable change in this country has to incorporate large groups. Now, yeah, it could be just one party, presuming that one party had 66% control of the government, 66% control of, say, the hearts and minds of the United States. We don't. At best, we have 51%, 49%, just flipping between the two year after year. And that's more kind of my, you know, Roger, kind of to your point, I am deeply concerned with, okay, what exactly in the mind of hearts of the Trump administration in terms of, yeah, it's one thing to take out Maduro, but are we going to aggressively move against Greenland,
Yes.
both an ally and connected with allies, Denmark and the broader Western world, or Canada, as you say? I'm less concerned that we're going to have like a Maduro style there, for the simple reason that I think Trump reaches for these low-hanging fruits of things he can do. But I do think that that's kind of indicative of he will get away with what he can get away with. And sometimes that's directed towards our enemies. And sometimes that's just, and look, put me on record for, I think it would be a great thing if the United States had Greenland as a territory, providing it was done in an amicable way, that all parties were in agreement. But that's a very different thing than just sort of this ham-fisted nationalist approach of, you're in our hemisphere, therefore we get to take charge here. And I think that kind of short-term thinking, years after Trump is gone, is going to do irreparable damage to our ability to project not only strength, but some sense of security and allyship with other nation states that have our best interests in mind, in theory, that, or let's say we have shared national interests. They need to be able to trust us, no matter who the president is, and they can't do it with someone who can't seem to differentiate between the enemies within in a Maduro administration and whoever's in charge of Greenland.
Well, Trump doesn't have allies. He doesn't believe in allies. He believes in throwing his weight. The fact that Denmark is a member of NATO and a long-term ally of the U.S. will not deter him one bit. If he thinks the conditions are right, he'll move on them. I'm certain of it.
Yeah, I know there was a guy that wrote an article for The Hill about how to bring Greenland into the United States in a peaceful, constitutional way. I don't know what that guy's name was, but you could go on go to The Hill's website and find that. It was me.
Yeah, I think I read that.
And look, I don't actually think that Trump is going to do anything with Greenland in any type of military fashion. And while I might agree that Trump might want to, I just don't think that he's going to be able to get away with it. The book that we skipped over, the Shapiro book, there's a conversation that Shapiro reveals about that he had with President Trump. I think it was either in between his term or right at the beginning of his second term, where Shapiro was telling, or Trump was telling Shapiro, like, you know why Russia didn't invade Ukraine while I was president? Because I told Putin that I would bomb the heck out of him. And that's why he didn't do it. And he knew that Biden wouldn't bomb the heck out of him. And, Shapiro makes the point of like, it's a defense mechanism. He might actually believe that Trump would do this, right? I think we all believe that Trump might do anything because he's got the Nixon madman theory, right? And but he doesn't. He doesn't bomb the heck out of Russia. When he gets back into, as president, he's not bombing Russia. Russia is doing, and he's taken the other route where he's kind of,
supporting. He's being supportive.
He's, being a lot more supportive towards Russia than he is towards Ukraine, at least with his words. And at least what we can tell, there's always a chance in politics that there's a backdoor deal that's something completely different. But, forward facing, Trump is he's a pretty transparent person for the most part, to be honest with you. So I don't imagine that he's doing anything different behind closed doors. But, I don't really see the Greenland thing happening. I overall, Maduro's a bad guy. It's probably better that he's not in there. What happens next is kind of like, it's anybody's game. I feel a lot more confident if we had a larger representative body that could build a coalition to actually think these things through. And unfortunately, we don't. And I think that's ultimately the problem, because in 3 years, we're going to have a new president. And it's probably going to be from a new party. And it's probably going to be a completely different political coalition in Congress. And, everything gets reset. And when you're talking about geopolitics, there's got to be a little bit of stability, some planning from one generation to the next, from one group to the next group, and we just don't have it right now. We're constantly
we used to do that every
forth.
time the administration changed. When did that stop? Who stopped that? Do you remember? Because I do.
All right. Let's get to the last segment of the night. Looking ahead to 2026. As I mentioned earlier in the show, we have some exciting news to share here. So 2026 is the year of no cap. Okay, it is the year that we're gonna make representation a midterm topic. The 2030 census is fast approaching, and this is the perfect time to uncap the House, which means it's the perfect time to put pressure on our representatives to talk about this issue, because we need to uncap the House so we can expand the House once the 2030 census is done. So as a little bit of special announcement, we added 2 board members. Our first board member that we added is Thomas Howes of the Reagan Caucus. Josh, I know you're familiar with Thomas.
Oh, yeah.
And nodding. Nodding and smiling.
And we also added Matt Beat, Mr. Beat, or Beatmaster Beat, as he is known, YouTube sensation, to our board. Now, remember, we're trying to be a bipartisan organization. Representation is for everybody, Republican or Democrat alike. So we're trying to balance our selections. Obviously, Thomas is part of a conservative Reagan coalition. Matt is more left of center, working, he's interviewed a lot of Democratic candidates and stuff. So we're trying to keep things balanced. Now Roger has a little help on the left side. We're still tilted a little right, but I think Walter's like maybe a little wild card there. I don't know.
There's not much tilt in this group. I mean, this is pretty much straight down the middle group. Yes, you guys are conservative and members of the Republican Party, but you don't say stuff like I hear these assholes on TV say. So I figure you're okay.
Well, that's probably why we're not on TV. Is because we won't say those things.
Almost certainly. And I don't apologize for cussing. But I do amend my earlier statement. Donald Trump does have one ally. His name is Vladimir Putin.
All right. So I do want to know what you guys are thinking for 2026, but here's what I'm thinking for 2026. One, we met our fundraising goal in December of $5,000, so that's fantastic. If you can help us meet our fundraising goal in January, that would be wonderful. We've already raised a little bit, not too much, but the month has just gotten started. And we have added our new board member, Matt Beat, is emailing his representative every day to get a meeting about uncapping the House of Representatives. I have a meeting with my representative on January 13th, and what we want to ask you is we want you to email your representative. Walter and I created a form email, and we put it up on our website. If you go to www.y435.org, you can go to our volunteer page, and you can select email your representative. Even if you're not sure who your representative is, if you click that link in there, you can go type in your zip code and it'll let you know who your representative is. You can go to their contact page, you can copy and paste our email and send it in to them. Representation is the way of self-government. And we want
Addendum. Don't just stop with your representative. Email both of your senators too, because if this is going to happen, it's going to be an act of Congress and the Senate has to approve it as well. Email your senators, maybe not every day, but include them because they're part of the solution as well.
Sorry to interrupt, but it just occurred to me, Jeff, to give you a plug here that if the House were uncapped, you probably wouldn't have to use the phrase "if you don't know who your representative is."
yeah, absolutely. It'd be a lot easier.
There's a lot of Americans who wouldn't know even if we did have 1 to 30,000.
Sure, they just probably wouldn't be watching shows like this.
Yeah, true.
We're trying to create monthly meetups, representation meetups. Right now we have 2 on the books officially. I'm going to be hosting one in Manassas. Our first one is going to be on January 27th. And Walter is going to be hosting one in Wyoming. And his first is going to be on February. What's the date, Walter?
Valentine's Day?
No. You're muted. Or your sound's not working.
First Friday. It's the first Friday club, so it's really easy to remember, Jeff. It's the first Friday of every month.
It's the first Friday in February.
Yes.
I don't know what that date is off the top of my head, but it's the first Friday.
Well, you don't have to know because it's the first one.
All right.
It's the 6th. It's the 6th of February.
And we're looking for more people to host meetings. I've been in talk with a few different volunteers across the country that are interested, and we'd love to get you on the books. We'll add it to our website so people can RSVP. So if you're in the Wyoming or the Manassas area and you're interested in coming to a representation meeting, Walter's is going to be kind of like a debate club. Mine's going to be more like a town hall. We're going to mesh the meetings to the demographic that we have. Walter's got more of a college town, and I've got more of a suburban dad town. So, I'm just, people want to be heard. They want to hear about things. So we're trying to put it out. Our first, in my town hall, the first topic is going to be immigration. It ties directly into representation, and it's an issue out there that a lot of people are concerned about. So if you're in the Manassas area, you can go to our website, www.y435.org. You can RSVP, and then you can come out to Heritage Brewing on January 27th. It's a Tuesday night at 6 p.m. We'll have a great conversation.
And we're competing, so be sure you register, because if I get more people than Jeff, then he has to pay me in silver dollars. So I would greatly appreciate it.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because I have so when I was a kid, my grandfather had this big coin collection, and I was cleaning out my basement over the Christmas holiday because I'm moving my kids' rooms around, and I found my old treasure box. Every kid had like a shoe box with all their stuff in it, and in the shoe box is this pouch that I made when I was in middle school. It's like I did it in sewing class, right? And in it it's completely full of silver dollars. And my kids were like, what is this? They thought they thought they had an actual treasure And I was like,
Yeah.
no, it's not worth as much as you think. But
Well,
it's still
yeah,
cool.
but it kind of is a treasure. It's
It is.
from your youth, so it's kind of a treasure to them.
Oh, I
your
took it up to
children.
my room and I put it back in my closet. It's still my treasure box. All right, let's go.
I also have a treasure box, but I gotta ask Josh one more question. Are you going to be at Principals First?
Am I going to the Principal's First conference? No, I don't do much traveling these days, and I'm here in Oklahoma, so it takes quite a bit to get me out.
Okay, very nice. Where in Oklahoma are you?
Tulsa area.
Okay, cool. And you're also a CPA, as people see. This is amazing. Is your day job being a CPA?
That's the only thing that pays me is being a CPA. Yes, I work for the state of Oklahoma. We're government auditors. We're the good guys because that means we audit governments, not taxpayers.
Oh, very cool. I
like
like
that.
you.
Yeah.
You don't audit businesses for sales tax and that sort of thing.
Not in Oklahoma. They do that.
No?
The state auditor does in Texas. That's one of their main
Okay.
main functions. But here in Oklahoma, we just audit. We got so many towns and authorities and too many. But
Well, that's interesting. Here's a CPA who does not work in public accounting. I'm a CPA who does not work in public accounting. Never did. I got my CPA the hard way. I've never worked for a public accounting firm.
how did you manage? I had to come up through a public accounting firm myself. How did you manage that?
Just 3 years of experience with an affidavit from someone that's trustworthy that I was working on accounting things. I happened to be in a treasury job at the time, FAS 133, and the euro became a thing and all the other currencies went away. So I had to do a lot of research on whether our hedging method would survive the implementation of FAS 133. And that's what got me over the hump.
Wow. I would love to talk to you more about audit accounting standards, but that may alienate part of the audience.
Well, yeah, and we
that.
do need to. No, we do need to have that discussion, right? Because my view as a CPA is that an audit is trying to determine if an organization is performing to the applicable standard. I consider the applicable standard for our federal government to be the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, and my audit of their performance to those applicable standards is a qualified audit at best.
Just for the uninitiated, because it's very disturbing to me, Roger, how many people assume a qualified audit is a good thing. That is the except for audit. In other words, you're saying except for this thing, it's otherwise okay. An unqualified opinion is what you really want.
An unqualified opinion, unequivocal opinion, unqualified
One of the
opinion. That's what you
most
want.
terrifying things
And-
as an auditor is we go into a boardroom or a government and they're very proud of their qualified audit they got last year.
Yep. So
All right.
I say our government is failing if those are the applicable standards, and I think there's a solid case they are.
So let's circle back. It's 2026. It's the beginning of the year. I've told you what I see for the future of 2026. I see no cap, right? I see talking about uncapping the House of Representatives, emailing our representatives, getting this on the debate stage come the midterms. What else is going to happen in 2026? What do you guys see? What's your crystal ball say?
Trump's going to move on Greenland.
Roger thinks Trump's going to move on Greenland. Josh?
I think artificial intelligence is both simultaneously going to be underappreciated and overappreciated. Overappreciated first, I think all the people saying it's going to produce James Cameron's The Terminator or some sort of utopia are going to be wrong, but that we don't necessarily have the capacity to fully know the way in which it's truly going to change things. Maybe slower than over 2026, but certainly I really think it's going to be a different world we're moving into.
I see robots everywhere. I think Boston Dynamics figured out the whole robot thing a while back, and all of a sudden we have pretty inexpensive AGI-ish, intelligences that are silicon-based. And yeah, I think it's going to be weirder than it's going to be not weird, I guess would be my prediction. I also predict a lot of representation foundation growth with professionals like the great CPAs we have here and the great lawyers who are listening, as well as other representatives, right, in the professional sphere. We're very focused on that. In addition to electoral representation, we believe that professional representatives are struggling, I think, in this world of learned helplessness, where seemingly everyone just gets to flout the rules, except for us, the professionals who have to uphold the duties and the standards and the fiduciary obligations that really make the world go round. So if you're interested in that work, if you're an electrician, a plumber, a CPA, a doctor, an engineer, please reach out to me. You can email me at w@y435.org, and I would love to connect with you. We have a couple more spots on our board that are available, and I would love to get to know each and every one of you as, I don't know, 26 continues to be the most exciting year yet in my life, that's for sure.
A quick follow-up question on that, Walter. Have you read the book On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder?
I have not.
He has a chapter. It's a short book. It's 20 lessons from the 20th century, drawn from fascist and tyrannical movements throughout the 20th century. There's a whole chapter on professionals remembering their ethical obligations and how important that is when the rest of it, when the rest of the morality is falling away, we can keep that going. And he has concrete examples from throughout the 20th century.
Who's it by again?
His name is Timothy Snyder. He's a Yale professor.
Okay.
He's not at Yale at the moment. He's in Toronto because he felt uncomfortable when Trump got reelected. But yeah, the book is On Tyranny, and 20 lessons. It's I listened to it on Audible on the way to Maryland today in the car. It was an hour and 47 minutes.
All right. Well, I will definitely check that out, Roger. Thank you. And I agree. So all of you professionals out there, it may be on you here shortly. So
All right.
keep up the good work.
So who's going to take the House in the midterms? Is it going to Republicans or the Democrats, and who's going to take the Senate?
Dems will take the House, unsure about the Senate.
Walter?
If Republicans get off their asses and uncap the House or make that a key talking point going into the midterms, they sweep them and have 100 years of Republican supermajority in both the House and the Senate, and we don't have to abolish the any filibuster situation. So.
But what do you really think is going to happen, though?
That's what I really think.
Because you just said if they do this thing, but that's a big if. So like, what's your prediction?
I misspoke. I misspoke. I'm so sorry. When Republicans get off their asses and decide to make uncapping the House a focal point of their platform, they will absolutely destroy the Democrats, and it's going to be incredible. I look forward to it.
And the good news is the largest party is no party, so you can destroy the Democrats and still not have the majority.
Josh?
I think the smart money is on the Democrats take the House, the Republicans less likely, but possibly retain the Senate. But, we know in politics that November's a long ways away, and who knows what's going to happen between now and then.
All right, I got another question for you. Let's say Democrats take both the House and the Senate. We kind of, with the exception of Walter, I think everybody thinks the Democrats are taking the House. Good chance they take the Senate as well. Does Trump get impeached again?
After all the others. They need to start with Thomas, Eileen Cannon. There's quite a few others that need to be swept away first. Let Trump continue to flail, just cut his funding. Go after him towards the end.
Josh?
I have a really hard time believing we could go through 2 solid years of a Trump administration, Democratic Congress, and them not find some reason to impeach him.
But is it good politics to do it? I mean, if we're being honest, isn't everything that the Democrats do trying to take down Trump just strengthen his power? Like, I mean, it's happened over and over and over again. And I think Goldberg kind of mentioned it. He's like this idiot savant where he backs his way into success by just being selfish, and ultimately it keeps working for him. At some point, the Democrats need to try something different. I mean, what do you think?
I don't know that they have the capacity to do that. Is it good or bad politics? I don't know. It depends on the situation, right? This will never happen, or maybe I shouldn't say never. Maybe after I long for the day when a Republican Congress impeaches a Republican president or a Democrat Congress impeaches a Democrat president. It cannot be that the only check our Congress has against the executive branch is who happens to be in charge of it. That's not how it's designed. And I think that is part of the problem. Maybe an answer to your question is that it seems inevitable if the Democrats take control and have at least a sliver of a majority, let's say, and Trump does something stupid, which is almost inevitable. I think the immense pressure upon those Democratic congressmen from their constituents would almost certainly be impeachment, even if it's not politically salient. Nancy Pelosi was, for all her faults, and she has many, a relatively intelligent House leader, and I think she had a hard time understanding how to navigate impeachment. Part of it wasn't her fault. The original impeachment over the Russia issue was the left, broadly speaking, had way overpromised and underdelivered on what was actually in that Mueller report, and it put Pelosi in a very terrible position because she couldn't not impeach, but it wasn't the smoking gun that some of the American people have been promised. Anyhow, I'm not trying to get too far into that. I guess I'm just saying that impeachment can be done right. It's just we've not seen it, and I'm concerned we're just going to get a repeat of kind of that first impeachment where it just makes Trump stronger, and it just continues to wedge our country apart. That when the Democrats are in charge, they impeach Republicans, or Republicans in charge, they'll impeach Democrats, and it would never be the other way.
I have an alternate theory or possibility here when it comes to impeachment, and it doesn't have to be a Republican Congress impeaching a Republican president. It could be a Democratic Congress with a large Republican coalition.
That's
okay?
fair. Yeah,
and we
that's
could
fair.
and think about this. JD Vance wants to be president. Okay, you always have an incumbency advantage. Okay, if Donald Trump does something different, JD Vance is the president of the Senate. Okay, he goes to his former Senate colleagues. He's got a lot of friends in Congress. He goes, look, this guy's lost his marbles. Here's the proof. They make him president. Okay, now he's got the opportunity. The Democrats want Trump out. They want to win, right? They want to win by getting rid of this guy. So the Democrats all vote to get rid of Trump. JD Vance, if he can swing 20 Republican senators to his side, right? He gets to be the guy that takes down Trump and takes over his coalition potentially. If he can walk that very tight line, there's a possibility here. And he can edge Rubio out of play, right? Because right now, as Goldberg mentioned in your show, there's going to be a fight for that nomination. But if Trump gets impeached and Vance is already president, then there's no fight. Vance is going to get that job.
You think MAGA will support Vance if he takes Trump out? If he's the one who takes Trump out, you think
I don't think MAGA matters after Trump. I think that there's other.
What's Vance's base if it's not MAGA?
Vance's base is, well, right now it's financial, right? It's the tech sector. It's Peter Thiel. It's Elon Musk. He's got money.
Those are financiers. That's not a base. Those are two people with money.
Right, but they build.
Who's his base? Who's going to vote for it?
Money gets people to vote. Just ask Lyndon Johnson. I mean, I don't know what Vance is going to be in 2027 and 2028. I don't know what his platform. Vance has been everything so far in his career, and there's a good chance he's going to be something different. But that was LBJ, right? And LBJ was a successful politician, and Vance could be that type of guy. Walter, what do you think?
When we uncap the House, there will not be an impeachment, and if there is, it will be taken seriously.
I can agree with that.
That sounds right.
All right. It was a great show, guys. Josh, again, thank you so much for coming out. For those of you who are trying to find Josh, it's the Saving Elephants. What is your website name, Josh?
Saving Elephants blog.
SavingElePhantsBlog.com. Great podcast. As you can tell from this podcast, from this episode, Josh has a fantastic podcast voice. If we all had that type of voice, we'd probably still be CPAs working for the government. But
I have been told by multiple friends that my podcast has helped them go to sleep at night.
You have a very soothing voice, I've got to say. But
is it his voice or is it the content? It sounds like a double. It sounds like a backhanded compliment to me.
Yeah, I never quite knew how to take that as a compliment or
what. That's like this radio program. Actually, I listened to it on streaming now. Music from the Hearts of Space. Have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
It's been around for over 40 years. It plays on NPR still. It's like a 1 hour radio program, but I subscribe and stream it. But the two guys, Stephen Hill and Stephen Davis, both of them have outstanding radio voices. I mean, virtually perfect radio announcer voices. You ought to check it out. Just go to their
Okay.
website and listen as a guest just to hear their voices.
I will.
So January, we've got a full slate of guests on tap. Next week is going to be Tyler Sick, who is an associate professor at Pikesville University. On the 19th, we have Dylan Pahman. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. He is with the Acton Institute. He's an author. And on the 26th, we have Matt Lewis, political commentator and writer.
No relation.
Yeah, no, I was literally going to say no relation that I'm aware of, anyways.
And as a note to that, the Matt Lewis episode is going to be at a special time, so we'll post that as well so you guys can know. So again, you can follow us on X at No Cap Fund. You can go to our website www.y435.org. You can donate. You can sign up to volunteer. You can email your representative. That's very important. Take the time and do that. And you can sign our declaration. Any last words from the crew before we get out of here?
Last words are not my forte. I just want to say it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you guys inviting me on. I enjoyed the conversation.
Blow the roof off the house.
Thank you, Josh, for being here. It was a pleasure. And although we're not going to be able to see you in DC in a month and a half or 2 months, I look forward to having another conversation. It was great. I feel like you've really got a mind for what's going on, and you are not hard to listen to. So you're always welcome back.
And I learned a lot about conservatism from listening to you.
Awesome.
Oh.
All right. Thank you for joining us. Peace, love, and representation.